점수 잡는 hackers.
Hi, welcome to Hackers Digital SAT Reading Volume 2. Today we'll be covering Test 1, Module 1, Question 1 through 14. So before we get started, let's take a look at the different question types. We have 4 vocabulary and context problems, followed by 7 fact problems and 3 inference problems. So we'll cover the fact problems first and then move on to inference questions. Okay, so here's a color scheme to remember in understanding the text in each question. Those part in the text that's highlighted blue indicates the topic or the subject matter, and the words or expressions that are colored yellow would indicate a pivoting point in the passage. So the passage may change direction or draw to a conclusion. Okay, the gray highlights indicate key content, and last of all, most importantly, the pink colored ones indicate the reference for your answer. So keep that in mind when you're solving each problem. All right, so we start with the first one. Planetary scientists AB and JA believe that they have found evidence of an active mantle plume pushing up the surface of Mars. The presence of this plume suggests that the planet hides a warm interior and that it is more blank than previously thought. So whenever you come across a contrasting structure, you get the antonym clue. And by antonym, I don't mean a word that means exactly the opposite, but a logical opposite. So these words, can come in an unconventional form. You not only see words like yet or however, you can see words like, previously, or before or after structure to indicate a contrast. So then previously thought, conventional science has long asserted, so this of course to what was believed previously, that Mars is dead. All right, so we're looking for a word that would stand in opposition to the word dead. So which word can be used to describe the interior state of Mars, and that's also opposite to the word dead? The word would be dynamic, right? Because the word dynamic is characterized by, a constant movement or a changing state of things. What about other words? Diverse, mysterious, or vulnerable. A word has to describe the interior state of Mars. So the word diverse, unless it's talking about the composition of the inner portions of Mars, the word diverse would not be idiomatic within this context. So is the word mysterious, because we're talking about the interior of Mars and how it's not dead, not inactive. So mysterious receives no contextual support, as well as the word vulnerable. Vulnerable means, weak or susceptible to damage, right? Okay, so to sum everything up, the first question provides a contrast structure, and the clue comes from the word dead. All right, so moving on to the second one. Northern Florida Seminole from the Creek were Seminole, or runaway, were essentially a patchwork of refugees bound by the shared goal of escaping colonist rule, indenture servitude, and other struggles occurring around the time of the American Revolution. So these are groups of people who gathered for different causes that were stated in the first sentence. The group consisted largely of Native Americans of Creek origin, but also signals, a degree, a change in degree. It also signals a parallel structure. So we are to expect that whatever should be in the blank would mean consisting of or including. Okay, so what kind of people, would this group include? Of various ethnicities, including Africans and Europeans. Okay, so consisting of or including. The group integrated, meaning that combining into a whole. So the group integrated people from various ethnicities. That would make the most sense, logically within the context. But let's look at other words as well. What about the word confronted? Confronting is standing up against or going against something, right? So this would receive no contextual support. Renouncing is doing away with or giving up, right? So this also has nothing to do with the composition of people. And inciting is provoking, often, used in a negative connotation. So on top of not receiving contextual support, this word also would be off tone according to the text. Okay, so the second problem provides a parallel structure, and then we are to get the clue from consisting of and including. All right, third one. As the buffalo gathered in massive herds to raise their young in late spring and summer, so too would the Plain Indians assembled in large numbers to descend on the animals for their annual hunt. Okay, So it describes the annual hunt. Throughout the rest of the year, when the buffalo were more widely dispersed, the plain Indians likewise. So this signals a parallel structure, right? So what would happen to these people as well? They would also disperse. All right. So the right word to guess would be to look at each word and think about what would happen to the people. Just like the buffalo. So when the buffalo were more widely dispersed, the plain Indians would also disperse, spread out. So they would scatter. What about vanish? Well, I mean, a group of people can certainly vanish, but that doesn't really receive any sort of contextual support, right? Because it has to do with people, coming together and dispersing, during the hunting season. So vanishing would receive no contextual support. Coalescing is coming together to form a single mass. So this would actually go against the contextual clue. And last one, huddle, means to come together. So this would also contradict contextual clue. So whenever you're split between two or more answer choices, there are two additional filters to apply. And as long as you understand that we're looking for a word that would describe what would happen to the Indians, their people, right? So coalescing would not really be an idiomatic word to use in this context. So this one provides a parallel structure, and the hint comes from the word dispersed. So now we move on to big picture fact problems. Okay, we can clearly see that it's a double passage, so we start from the question. Based on the text, how would Johnson in text 2 most likely characterize the view presented in text 1? So first of all, we need to identify what exactly the view is in text 1. And then we need to find this person, Johnson, in text 2 to see what this person's viewpoint is, what this person's response would be. All right, and it's important to keep in mind the name that's being asked in the question, because Johnson may not be the only person that's being mentioned in text 2. So remember that. Okay, so why don't we start from the top? Biologist Santiago P. maintains that the brown bear, wolf, and lynx should be reintroduced. So right off the bat, we can see what the view is, right? It should be reintroduced into the Pyrenees for multiple reasons. Their reintroduction would control mesopredator population and maintain herbivore population levels. Additionally, okay, so here's another reason, they can revitalize the Pyrenees economy through nature tourism. While they do prey on beehives and livestock, okay, so they do cause some damage. Okay, the damage caused does not represent the economic disaster. And compensation is paid for actual cases of damages. So compensation is being paid for the damages. So reintroduction of the predators, brown bear, wolf, and lynx, should be reintroduced because of the two reasons that's being provided. So that's basically the viewpoint in text 1. What about text 2? According to Andrew P. Johnson, professor of evolutionary biology at Princeton University, climate change is a principal driver. Okay, this simply means the main cause, right? The main factor, the driving factor of ecosystem change, not apex predators. And where do we see apex predators? In text 1. So in fact, text 1 is trying to say that that we need to reintroduce apex predators into the Pyrenees. So, and this, this next text clearly states that the principal driver of ecosystem change is climate, not apex predators, as once theorized. And changes in vegetation may have been driven by bottom-up changes, okay, in water availability due to changes in snow melt patterns. The professor, however, okay, so this may be a point where the passage pivots, acknowledges the potential benefits. So there's a partial acknowledgement here. Okay, whenever you see a partial acknowledgement, you can safely anticipate that it would pivot again at some point, because it's a typical pattern of concession and rebuttal. Okay, acknowledges the potential benefits of wolf reintroduction in reducing the spread of chronic wasting disease. So it's beneficial in reducing a certain type of disease, but asserts that it will be another decade or so until the effects of the wolves' reintroduction of Yellowstone are entirely able to be quantified. So it would take another decade or so. It would take more than 10 years to figure out to exactly put into numbers the effective reintroduction of apex predators. Okay, so let's keep that position in mind. Okay, obviously text 2, Johnson would not completely agree with the view in text 1, okay? And the overall position regarding the proposition in text 1, the view in text 1 is negative. So keep that in mind. When you're examining the answer choices, also keep in mind that because we're being asked of text 2, the information in the answer choice should also be based in text 2, not in text 1, not on text 1, okay? So keep that in mind. All right, A, as dependent, because the position it advocates relies on governmental assistance to ameliorate the economic impact the wolves would have on agriculture. The impact of wolves on agriculture and the governmental assistance, remember, it's mentioned in text 1. So although you may sense a negative tone in this answer choice, it should be avoided because whatever is written in this answer choice comes from text 1. So these would be impact of wolves, governmental assistance. These would all be off-topic elements, okay, when we consider text 2. Okay, what about B? As pessimistic, all right? So that carries the right tone because it anticipates, because it foresees outcomes from the reintroduction of apex predators to the Pyrenees that could have lasting environmental consequences. Okay, lasting environmental consequences has to do with long-lasting impact. Okay, does text 2 talk about long-lasting impact? No, it doesn't, right? Why don't we revisit the last part of text 2? It clearly states that in order to see the effect, we would have to wait until, wait more than 10 years, okay, to see what exactly the impact is. So B misrepresents text 2, so this last part of the answer choice, although it has the right tone, would contradict text 2. Let's look at C. As short-sighted, all right, that also carries a negative tone, because it focuses on immediate effects without discussing whether bottom-up changes. And remember, bottom-up changes, it's one of the factors that's mentioned in text 2. So that's focused on the right content, okay? Have made reintroduction tenable, okay? Achievable. So it's short-sighted in the sense that it does not consider the long-term effect, which is uncertain at best at this point, and the bottom-up changes that may be affecting the environment overall. Okay, so C carries the right tone and also draws from the right text and addresses the right factor that's being proposed by text 2. So C is our best candidate so far. Let's look at the last one. As promising, this is, right off the bat, it's off tone, right? Because text 2 would clearly go against text 1. Because rampant mesopredator interaction with herbivore species can mitigate some of the damages from bottom-up changes due to climate change. This may properly represent the position of text 1, but it clearly goes against the tone of text 2 because right from the beginning it doesn't have the right tone. All right, so we can finalize the answer to C. Now we have inference problems, and to start from the question, you should, find, which part of the question signals an inference question. So if true, which finding if true would most directly undermine SI and Y's hypothesis? So we need to identify what the hypothesis is, and keep in mind that we need to undermine this hypothesis. Okay, the fact that it's an inference problem signals that that any new information in the answer choice is always welcomed. But it shouldn't just be a random piece of information. It needs to have a right logical base within the text. So let's start from the top. Plants generally do not move, yet they can propagate over a wide area because their seeds are dispersed in various ways. For instance, birds may consume the soft flesh of a plant's fruit, but excrete the seed. Excreting is, pooping out seed, which is typically protected by a hard shell, like plants. And this is the right topic of the text because although the passage starts with, with information about plants, it actually focuses on stick insects Like plants, stick insects have low mobility and yet are widely dispersed. So it's very similar to plants. They also have eggs with relatively hard seed-like shells. This led KS, KI, and TY to hypothesize. This is exactly what we're looking for, right? So this led these people to hypothesize that stick insects are dispersed in a manner similar to plants. So let's remember how plants are being described as, as dispersing the seeds. The seeds are being consumed by birds and it's excreted, and that's how they propagate. So they hypothesized that stick insects propagate, they spread in a similar manner. Let's look at the last part of the text. Specifically, they speculated, they guessed. Okay, this also matches with hypothesis. They hypothesized that when birds consume adult stick insects, keep this in mind, okay? So the birds do not consume seeds directly, but they consume adult stick insects. Eggs in the insect's body pass through undigested and are excreted onto the ground, where they hatch into new stick insects. So birds eat adult insects, and the eggs inside the insect pass through, and when they're excreted, they propagate. So that's the hypothesis. Are we looking to support this hypothesis or undermine it? Remember, we're trying to undermine this hypothesis, okay? So let's look at A. The seeds of some fruits consumed by birds did not grow in plants as a result of being partially digested. Okay, what is wrong about this answer choice? Right from the start. The seed of some fruits. Are we talking about fruits? This is not even the topic of this text, and not even remotely a part of hypothesis. So fruits would be an off-topic element in this answer choice. Okay, so that gets crossed out. What about B? Some of the brown-eared bulbils. Remember, in an inference problem, new information is always allowed. Okay, so this would be a type of bird, right? Rejected the eggs as food and showed a preference for eating live adult insects. What did the passage say about, birds eating the insect? It did not consume, they hypothesized that the birds consume adult insects. So saying that they preferred consuming adult insects does nothing to the hypothesis, right? So preference for eating adult stick insects would do nothing to undermine this hypothesis. Okay, so that gets crossed out as well. Let's look at C. The eggs of stick insects that were fed to the birds did not hatch despite being consumed and excreted whole. This makes sense, right? The eggs of stick insects that were fed to the birds, so they were consumed by the birds, did not hatch, meaning that the egg, had safely been excreted, but they did not hatch. What would that mean? That the stick insects would not be able to propagate, right? So this clearly undermines the hypothesis in the last part of the text. And let's look at the last one. Some of the stick insects hatched from the eggs fed to brown-eared bulbils did not survive into adulthood. Stick insects not surviving into adulthood is not the concern of the hypothesis, right? The hypothesis is only concerned with the insect's propagation. So this would certainly be an off-focus element. That has nothing to do with the hypothesis. So we're left with answer choice C, which clearly undermines or weakens the hypothesis being provided. All right, let's move on. Number 13. So whenever you see a blank at the end, see to it that you understand, what you need at that last part, a conclusion, a reason, or supporting evidence. Okay? All right, so to start from the question, we're looking to logically complete this passage. Phytoplankton blooms are dense accumulations of microscopic algae or cyanobacteria near the surface of the water that can devastate coastal marine ecosystem. All right, so it's something bad, right? Though they occur naturally, so now we have identified the topic, phytoplankton blooms. Okay, the scientific community has long recognized that their incidence has increased due to high levels of agricultural runoff. So we do already clearly understand why they appear. Okay, they're due to high levels of agricultural runoff. Okay, nevertheless, this has been hard to quantify And this is what signals the answer, right? It's been hard to put into numbers as to how much they bloom and, in what size they appear, okay? Due to a lack of global data. However, large algal blooms, okay, topic appearing once more, produce a signature discoloration that can be detected from space. So that signals a solution, right? So as long as we can get an image from outer space, we would be able to quantify, right? Thus, researcher YDSY and DZ tracked satellite data from 2003 to 2020. By doing so, they were able to confirm. Okay, so what can be confirmed by looking at a satellite image? It's already in the passage. The answer is already in the passage, right? Because they weren't able to quantify it. Okay, but now they're looking at it from space. They can easily quantify the algal bloom. Don't be tricked by answer choices that talk about the cause, because the cause has long been recognized. It's long recognized that their incidence has increased due to agricultural runoff. All right, so the proper conclusion would be they able to confirm, the amount, the quantity. And it's so easy to pick the right answer because the only answer choice that talk about quantity is answer choice C. But let's look at all the other answer choices as well, because as long as you have a clear idea as to what you're looking for, you don't necessarily have to eliminate every answer choice. But for the purpose of explanation, I do eliminate every answer choice because I have no idea what the answer choice the students might pick, what kind of answer choices students might pick. So starting from A. Sudden algal growth in coastal communities is related to phosphorus-rich fertilizers. Once again, the reason for the algal bloom is clear in the passage, and that's not what we're concerned with. So answer choice A might contain information that may be correct, but is certainly off focus. What about B? The algae that blooms are composed of has become increasingly toxic in recent years. So them becoming more problematic is not related, is irrelevant to being able to quantify algal blooms from space. So this would also be off focus. Let's look at C. Phytoplankton blooms appear 60% more often. What does that indicate? That indicates quantity, right? More often than they did 2 decades ago. So the only answer choice that talks about quantity is answer choice C. What about the last one? Natural algae formation has been slowed due to human agricultural activity. Well, human agricultural activity and agricultural runoff is the cause of algal bloom. So this is highly unlikely, but we're not concerned with, each statement being true or, or false. We're concerned with the proper conclusion to be drawn at the last part of the passage. So this answer choice is also off focus. So if this question were to be a little more difficult, more than one answer choice would talk about quantity. But, lucky for us, this is the only answer choice, that talks about quantity, which was hard to identify prior to satellite imagery, right? So keep that in mind.